Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge is founded by Professor Dr. Karunyakara sir, and his idea behind this institution to provide an academic space to professors and social scientists who are engaged in the field of Dalit studies and marginalized studies. Today, Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge going to have its 40th lecture, and this lecture is a part of a series which we started on Ambedkar Jayanti 2025. Professor Dr. Leela Karunyakara sir going to chair today's session, and I'll take a pleasure to introduce and welcome him. Professor Dr. Leela Karunyakara sir is a former Vice Chancellor and founder of Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge. He is the author of the book History of Dalit Identity, and the other one is Modernization of Buddhism. After completing his PhD, Dr. Karunyakara joined as Assistant Professor in School of Ambedkar Studies, Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Central University, Lucknow. He introduced the Dalit History course in MA History program. He was instrumental in introducing 50% reservation for students in English and Ambedkar University Dalit Student Union in 2000 and Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Central University SC/ST Teachers Association in 2006. He joined as director cum professor in Babasaheb Ambedkar Sidhu Kano Murmu Dalit and Tribal Studies Center, Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Hindi Vishwavidyalaya. He held post of Dean of School of Culture, former Vice Chancellor of the University. I welcome Professor Dr. Leela Karunyakara sir. Welcome, sir. Now I request Dr. Smita Bhagat to please welcome and introduce our today's guest.
Yeah, thank you so much, Akash. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest, Professor Dr. S. Lourdunathan, a distinguished scholar, researcher, and author in the field of philosophy. Dr. S. Lourdunathan holds MA, MPhil, and PhD degrees in philosophy and has dedicated his life to teaching, research, and academic leadership. He served as the Associate Professor and Head of the Department of Philosophy at Arul Anandar College, Madurai for 34 years, where he played a significant role in shaping philosophical education and guiding seminarians from various religious communities and dioceses. He also served as an honorary professor of philosophy at the Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, where he taught phenomenology, Kantian ethics, and guided research scholars. In addition, he worked as a research coordinator at the Indian Social Institute, Bangalore, contributing to important research initiatives. Dr. Lourdunathan has also held the position of principal at the St. Joseph College of Arts and Science for Women, Salem. Furthermore, he has served as a visiting professor of philosophy at several reputed seminarian and institutions across India, including the Capuchin Seminary in Nilgiris, Tamil Nadu, Theological Seminary in Madurai, Herald of Goods News Seminary in Khammam, Clariton Seminary in Sevagram, Varda, and Palatian Seminary in Goa. He is a prolific writer and has authored several important books such as Postmodern Trends and Religious Discourse, Dalit Liberation Discourse, Philosophical Engagements, Invitation to Logic, Research Methodology, Social Philosophy, Human Rights Discourse, and Social Consciousness Constructions. In the field of research, Dr. Lourdunathan has guided many PhD scholars and completed several major and minor research projects sponsored by UGC and ICPR, including research on medical ethics, phenomenology, and technocratic society. He has also organized numerous national and international seminars and workshops sponsored by prestigious institutions such as UGC, ICPR, ICSSR, and the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla. His academic contributions extend beyond India. He has delivered lectures and keynote addresses in Germany, South Korea, Cambodia, and Malaysia, sharing his insights on philosophy, ethics and social thought with international audiences. Currently, he is working on course material on philosophical theology for students of theology and religion, and is also guiding a PhD scholar from Serampur Theological Seminary, Kolkata. We are truly honored to have such a renowned scholar and intellectual among us today. Let us warmly welcome Honorable Professor Dr. S. Lourdunathan. Most welcome, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Shall we begin?
Sure, sir.
So thank you. It's again.
Thank you.
It's again. Yes, Professor. Tell me.
And Professor Lourdunathan sir going to speak today on Dalit Phenomenological Hermeneutics, and I request him to please lecture. And we are just going to start. Professor Karunyakara sir going to start the slides. So you may start your lecture, sir.
Okay.
Akash, I don't know how to present the slides. So, Professor Lourdunathan sir,
Yes, sir.
just start. You just start your lecture.
Okay.
I'll be
Okay.
forwarding to Akash by mail.
Okay.
So he will be presenting in between.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's again. It's a pleasure and a privilege to meet all of you again for the second lecture, and especially invited by the Institute for Dalit Knowledge, organized by Professor Karunyakaran. I thank you all, and it's a pleasant morning to meet all of you. I see two important faces who have joined today. One, Professor Kumbam from Belgaum, and my good friend from Dr. Advocate Sujata from Orissa. So nice meeting you again. Well, I have titled for today's reflection. My title is this: Dalit Phenomenological Hermeneutics. Dalit Phenomenological Hermeneutics. So there are two important words that needs clarification. Basically, understanding phenomenology and understanding hermeneutics to explore Dalit reality. So, yes?
WhatsApp. I WhatsApp the password.
So this way I have coined it. The purpose of my reflection with you, I'll be too short. I'm amidst Viva actually. Somehow I made some time to be with you. So what is the purpose of today's reflection? Let's put it this way. Can somebody off that mic? I'm getting a lot of noise. Yes. Understanding phenomenological hermeneutics in order to explore Dalit reality. Now, let me quickly, for the want of time, let me simply make a preliminary understanding of these three terminologies that I would like to use. Normally, in Dalit concern, normally with reference to Dalit, the issues of annihilation of caste, liberation, there is a usual grammar. The grammar of stipulating the nature of caste against which the Dalits are being oppressed or subjugated, and the kind of protest that has to be politically or legally has to be operated. Now, my interest in Dalit literature or Dalit reality is to understand the question of Dalit from the point of view of construction of knowledge. This has been my long time interest. I am not a social activist. At the same time, my activism is socially concerned with, guided by certain sense of academic intelligentsia. I think that is where the whole Dalit sphere of knowledge is very much lacking. Is it clear? There are political issues, there are economic issues, there are issues related to everyday affecting the Dalit body. But then constructing a Dalit knowledge is a long way. It is a kind of an encyclopedia of understanding, and that is where I feel my mission over the past several years has been. And Professor Karunyakaran has given me an opportunity to meet all of you and discuss this particular ministry, or let us put it, the mission of my life to reconstruct what is concerned about what I call Dalit knowledge construction. So let me come back to this basic idea. There are three words. One is Dalit reality. I understand the word Dalit, and normally it is understood, all of you are aware of it, with reference to a sense of brokenness, a sense of subjugation, a sense of marginalization, right? The subjugation due to the theory-laden and the social-laden of brokenness. So normally, in other words, the word Dalit is equated with a sense of being broken, being subjugated due to caste value hierarchy. But then there is another sense I would like to place before you to reconsider the sensibility of the reality called Dalit. There is another way I think you can come into to understand, appreciate, and unfold the sensibility of the Dalit reality. The Dalit reality from time immemorial has been a reality that has given itself to the society. In the process of giving itself, it got broken by certain dominant ideological, structural, social practices. So let me go to the Latin origin of the word da. Da would simply means to give, to restore, to give. Aquam da, give me water. Right? Da, it. The body of the Dalit has all along been a body that has voluntarily given itself to the social living of this human reality. In that sense, I understand the word Dalit from a different origin, an entity, an existential entity, a body that has all along given its labor, its contribution to the concerns of human development, and especially. But in the process, the body has been broken by certain other process, which you call the system of caste. So Dalit is a giver. He's not a receiver. He is not a receiver of reservation, but he has been a giver. That is the trajectory of being a Dalit. By giving, you have been vanquished. By being, you have been migrated. By giving, you have been what I call frustrated. You have been, by giving oneself, you have been fractured. So that sense of Dalitness gives me more a kind of a different explorative understanding of Dalit phenomenology. Now I am taking few examples within the 20th century, intellectual discourse vis-a-vis Dalit reality. So let me quickly pass on. I use a word, something called hermeneutics of suspicion and suspension. Hermeneutics would simply mean to render it explicit, to render the hidden meaning, to render the constrained meaning, to render the veiled meaning to the world. It's a kind of resurrectory process. Hermeneutics is not simply interpretation of a word. That's biblical scholars will do it, or scriptural scholars do it. It's not simply interpreting in your own situation, but it is to render the hidden, the veiled, the constrained, the dominated sensibilities. That's how I say it's an hermeneutics of suspicion. So Dalit, when it engages itself to the process of restoration, or what you call emancipation, I understand this way, the Dalit phenomena, the Dalit subject engages itself to a continued process of restoration of its life. That's what I mean by hermeneutics of suspicion. To engage a restoration, one has to exercise a sense of suspicion, a sense of doubt, right? Otherwise, truth is not clear. If you only start believing the dogma, and the dogma can veil the truth. Therefore, any claim to Dalit emancipation or any claim to ethics, any claim to morality, a Dalit engages a mode of phenomenological suspicion in order to unreveal the truth. And by that suspicion, it leads to second stage of engagement, what I call hermeneutic of suspension. If caste is anti-Dalit, right? if capitalism is anti-Dalit, if the structure is anti-Dalit, of the entire political, social, cultural ethos is anti-Dalit, antagonistic to Dalit living, then one has to engage a hermeneutics of suspension, starting from suspicion. It's not immediately jumping into some kind of NGO activism. Rather, the suspicion is an academic suspicion and it is an intellectual suspension. And it involves simultaneously a social commitment, involvement that some of you are good at it. Now, the purpose of engaging hermeneutics of suspicion, suspension of any judgments is meant for transformation not only of the Dalit reality, but the reality in total. In other words, there is a beautiful concept in hermeneutics, the concept of circle, hermeneutics of circle. So I'm just introducing you certain terms so that when we have discussion, you can clarify. What does this hermeneutics of circle means by? It simply means in a very simple language, the part is always in relation with the whole. I am a child, right? I am called a child in relation to a family, a parent. The individual, the part is in relation to the whole, and simultaneously the wholeness is relation to part. It is not segmentized part of belonging to some sophisticated status quo category of caste, upper caste allegations. Rather, it is the wholeness is simultaneously related with the part, and the part is related to the wholeness. Understanding of this relationship is a way of understanding the Dalit in the social world, which I call hermeneutics in terms of transformation. Now, this theoretical framework is not mine. I am taking this insight especially from four important thinkers, which you can do for your further reading and searches. One is Karl Marx. The other one is Nietzsche. The third one is Freud. And the fourth one is very closer to all of us, Ambedkar. Why I say these four people in 20th century engaged an hermeneutics of suspicion, of dominant ideologies, of dominant structures, and suspended them. For example, Karl Marx would be talking about ideological mystification, structures, apart from economic determination, which the entire Das Kapital is dedicated the process of suspending the dominant structural ideological mystification. In that sense, we can say Karl Marx and Nietzsche. Nietzsche was engaging suspension of all so-called divine right theory, where he gave predominance to human reason, human will to what we call to power. And the third important person within 20th century as a pointer, I would say, I think it is Freud. What are you talking about? There is a deeper sense of subconscious element that needs to be unrevealed. And the fourth related person would be what? Ambedkar. The entire contribution, especially his writings, starting from the problem of the rupee, right? Whether it is capitalism or Brahminism, or whether it is annihilation of caste, or whether it is philosophy of Hinduism. Is it clear? Or whether it is Buddha and Dharma. The entire composition, contribution, the intellectual contribution of Ambedkar revolves around this issue of suspension, suspicion, suspension, and transformation. So that is one important torch bearing that we learned from 20th century. Intellectual contribution. I've just summarized it for discussions. I think we can take it little more longer level. Another important theme I developed with reference to understanding, explicating the Dalit phenomenology is the notion of phenomenological reduction. And especially it is used by Husserl. Have you heard about this man, Husserl? It's called phenomenology or phenomenological reduction. To reduction means to bracket something. To reduce something is to bracket it in order to transform beyond bracketing. I'm not talking about classless society or casteless society where everything is unified and we are going to get the next day what we call a futuristic orientation of heaven. That is a big narrative lie. Right. Here we are talking about reduction of the dominant articulations. That means you use the word epoche. Epoche means you are bracketing it, especially the articulations, in order that the reality, the subject speaks for itself. Otherwise, people will be speaking for Dalits. And that has been the way. Vedas were speaking for the Dalits. Dalits did not speak for themselves. And the Vedic literature, Indian philosophical cultural tradition, articulate Dalits as the other than the other. They excluded the other, the denied other, the untouchable other. Is it clear? Not the equal other, the avarna. It is an articulation which needs to be what I call bracketed, which I call hydatic reduction. Hydatic simply means ideological. Let me put it in a very simple language. Hydatic in Husserl means ideological. Certain ideas are considered to be dominant idea under which the social structure is constructed. A particular monolithic idea is construed as the singular dominant narrative under whose umbrella the entire politics is constructed. And this is true with many institutional religions, including Christianity. So, Husserl invites a sense of phenomenological inquiry into the reality of being through consciousness. It's not awareness program. Through self-consciousness. By a mode of continued self-consciousness, the subject self is able to get rid of its subjectification, or let's say, put it in the normal language, its slave articulations, imprisonment, structural imprisonment, and it tries to move beyond this. And that is where the process of consciousness becomes conscious. This is, in a very simplified language, Husserl. Every subject has an inner capability to become self-conscious of itself. It is not the gift of God. That is again another monopolized ideology. Is it clear? Wherein it demands a sense of slavery to the ideological ontologies of religion. But then Husserl talks it differently. For Husserl, a phenomenological inquiry is to restore consciousness to its native original level. Let me spend more time on explaining Husserl so that let's see how best we can explore to understand, to restructure the understanding of Dalit knowledge structuring. Husserl talks about a word is not a thing but a symbolic representation. Put Husserl's entire phenomenology. A word is not a thing. Is it clear? But a symbolic representation. Do you understand? Am I making myself clear? A word is only a signifier. It is not necessary that it should signify an object. Now, this statement you have to understand in the background of psychologism and scientism. And especially Hegel, Husserl was critique of positivist science in 20th century, especially in 1930s. And Husserl was a little of narrative of Husserl is Husserl was a born Jew, right? He was a born Jew. Due to Nazism, he became a famous professor and a rector of a university in Freiburg in Germany. He was a prolific writer. Basically, he was a mathematician turned philosopher, and especially working in the line of consciousness. But for he being Jew, he was persecuted. And one of his students was Heidegger. He was a Catholic. His own student, by name Heidegger, became very famous for his book on being in time, and he was also a Catholic in a very religious sense also. And he was an Aryan German. Is it clear? And he was instrumental to what I call to perpetuate suffering to his guru, his head of the department, his rector, as his vice chancellor. So being a Jew within the Hitler regime, and especially the regime of Nazism, at the fag end of life, especially after 60s, 70s, Husserl was asked to get out of the university as a vice chancellor. He was prohibited to publish anything. He was kept in house arrest. Is it clear? So such a great thinker, a Jew turned into a Protestant Christian, who has contributed magnanimously to the work of consciousness, now writes, one has to restore the original sense of consciousness. Now you understand the background. So philosophy is not something born as if it is innocent, and especially theology and all that kind of things. They are not innocent ideologies. They are born of a particular politics. I used to say philosophy and theology are basically political in nature. They are not wholly innocent kind of catechism that one has to memorize. They are seriously political. By not making people understand the politics of it, we keep the people under one monopolized ideology. Now let me come back now to Husserl. Husserl says a word does not necessarily represent an object. It always operates, signifies as a matter of symbolic representation. In other words, sometimes when I say water is holy, does it have any physical object called water being holy? When I say Mr. X is a holy person, do I refer to any physical entity called that Mr. X is a holy person? For Husserl, it is nonsense. Rather, it is a sense made by symbolism, culturally transmitted symbolism, culturally transmitted articulations. He uses one word, abstractions. So many terms, words, which are constructed within the frame of linguistic frame, they are symbolic representations and need not be always related to the scientific claim that they are objectively real, nor they are subjectively real. I think I'm able to get across what Husserl is trying to explain to us. So, therefore, a word or a text can be meaningful by a mode of symbolic representation, or what we call cultural articulations, in other words, ontological abstraction or theological orientations. I'm using quickly words, therefore we can go ahead. Now let me explain, as I said, water is holy. Now it need not have any physical representation. It is a mental construct. The word is used in a sense of representing something which it does not represent any object. But you have an aura of being what? Considering water as holy, which has been culturally produced. So a word is not a thing like scientists believe, but rather it's a symbolic abstraction or representation which has been culturally transmitted through centuries. Now apply this idea of phenomenological understanding to the world of Dalit reality. In parallel, I think it makes a lot of sensibilities to me. For example, when a caste, a person of an upper caste, what do you call upper caste, right? Or made upper caste, is conceived as upper or higher, and another person, Y, is constructed within the realm of being low caste, a Dalit, a marginalized. These constructions are a problem of meaning as well. It's not only the direct problem that he or she faces as what you call poverty, deprivation, delimitations, marginalization, deprivation. Now the problem lies deeper. The problem lies in the articulation culturally transmitted through various forms of transgressions. It could be through festival, it could through a body symbol. There is a lot of body politics. When I see Swamiji, my body bends towards him. In other words, the idea is that Swami is a holy person, my body responds to it culturally. So what Heidegger Husserl would say that if X is construed as high, consequently Y is construed as lower. Between high and low, there is an hierarchy of value dualism, which is not only cultural, which is not only social, which is not only structural, but seriously, they are ideological abstraction. They are ideological underpinnings. So in putting in a simple language, Husserl gives me a tremendous sense of richness to explore the world of the Dalit reality. How the Dalit is being constructed as Dalit, which would mean certain abstractions like the other, the untouchable other, right? The broken other, and how the non-Dalit is simultaneously constructed as the touchable other. And both these constructions are what I call mental cultural abstractions, ideologically legitimized. Ideologically legitimized. I think I remember I was telling an example to explain the idea of abstractions, articulations. These abstractions, Husserl will call, they are not necessary abstraction. There is nothing necessary idea about it. Rather, they are arbitrary abstractions. Historical trajectory it goes through, they are abstracted through history, transmitted through history and culture, and the meaning is not essential. The meaning is not essential. That means to say a Dalit, it doesn't mean any essential meaning. It's only an abstracted meaning, articulated meaning, a fixation on the body of the person as Dalit, which equally applies a fixation or a prefixation to non-Dalit body as upper caste. So the problem of caste for Ambedkar, he would say it's a problem of mind. Caste is a mindset. I think that is how Ambedkar would say. Caste is a mindset. Putting all of them together and using this phenomenological inquiry into the sense of self, Heidegger, Husserl would invite us to return to things in themselves. This word is very interesting. Persons in themselves. When he says return to things in themselves, he means persons to themselves, to its originality, to its nativity, to its nativity. That means in its original nakedness of revelation. And that process is possible by a mode of self-consciousness of the self. Not only the immediate, the other world is we are conscious. Yeah, my friend is conscious of some issues related to social discrimination. And in the process, she becomes conscious that she is conscious of doing this, a particular liberative process, which Husserl will call self-consciousness. He will invite the process of emancipation is returning to consciousness. Returning to the consciousness of the self, that it is a self in relation to other self. I am not what I am in absence of any social relations. If my friend is absent and I cannot be considered a friend to him, nor he cannot be considered a friend to me. So it is that intersubjective consciousness within my self-consciousness, what I call paves, seeds the question of emancipation, the question of sense of emancipation. I will give you a story, a parable to explain this. We have in Indian culture the story of an elephant being touched by 6 blind men. I suppose you know that very well. This story is repeated, right? There are 6 learned blind men touching the elephant. Each one is revealing a particular perspective. It could be a Christian perspective. It could be a caste perspective. It could be a Hindu perspective. It could be a Vedantic perspective, right? It could be a Neo-Vedantin perspective. Each one, by touching the reality, by a mode of partial sense experience, they describe the reality as if it is real. Husserl will say that sense of partiality is called fractured consciousness. That Indian thought, Indian culture, we would say it is a kind of relativism. But Husserl will say it's a kind of fractured consciousness that we have to return to the original consciousness, which would mean differently. I think I have to little more spend on what Husserl tries to bring forth, the idea of returning to things themselves, returning to consciousness. The elephant being touched by six blind men, described variously in various names, naming. X is a Dalit. Elephant is touched. Y is a non-Dalit. X is an Avarna. A is a Kshatriya. B is a Shudra. Right? Now, this is ideology is scripture. And in Christian culture, similar ideology is structure, but the name is different. Similar ideological structure, the naming would be different. And this kind of ideological apparatus is quite common. I think when you talk about ideological apparatus, our mind should immediately move towards Antonio Gramsci, where he talks about ideological hegemony as a process of manipulating the subject. And this ideological hegemony is very devotionally soft. A devotional person may not be aware that he is within that ideological hegemony. Is it clear? And this is a long process. This is not one-day process of emancipation of the mind. This is a long process, a process of an intellectual conscious awareness that his consciousness has been colored by. This coloring prejudices, is it clear? Whether the prejudices are called holy or unholy. Is it clear? These prejudices needs to be bracketed in order that you transcend these abstraction, ontological constructions, theological claims as if they are all truth. The only possible truth is that self reveals itself. Put the story, my metaphor differently. The elephant is named wall or big structure like that. But what is the real name of the elephant? I have seen elephants begging in the temples. The real nature of the elephant is in the natural world, right? The Dalit world, the social world, the marginalized world is already abstracted through economic manipulative forces. And it is now described as marginalized, discriminated, that needs certain attention. But let the elephant speak its name. If elephant speaks its name, it may not call itself elephant. Am I making myself clear? If the elephant is let to speak its name, do you think it will call itself elephant or Lord Vinayaka? We name it. The culture articulates it. Whether you call the culture is holy or unholy, that's a different issue. It is an abstraction. It's an articulation. It's an ontological construct. So this intellectual tradition in the 20th century has a very strong discussion, the realm of returning to consciousness in itself. That is what Husserl will say, return to things in themselves. Return to things in themselves. There is another important person I would like to introduce to you, what he call Lyotard. 1960, he became famous for his work on a report on knowledge. For his work on a report on knowledge. I think good number of you would have come across Lyotard. 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 A report on knowledge. where he talks about how science in the 19th and the early 20th century prided itself to represent truth objectively. Prided itself. It claimed truth or knowledge is a matter of objectivity. All other forms of knowledge claims are pseudoscience. That is what positivism in simple language, or scientism in simple language. If something cannot be proved objectively, that X or thing is pseudo, false. It's a story. Now, Husserl and Lyotard, all these people are tracing a trajectory within the 20th intellectual tradition. I'm just tracing only one idea from them, that the scientific notion of truth as a matter of representation increasingly turned to be truth as a matter of repression. Truth as a matter of representation increasingly turned to be, politicized to be, as a matter of repression. The MLAs, the MPs that you elect, do you think they represent the people's voice? Only when there are problems, political problems, they make noise. Otherwise, the notion of representation, representing the community, in the process is lost. In fact, they become agents of repression. The voice of the poor, the voice of the discriminated cannot be represented objectively by other than himself or those people who are in communion with them, in an intelligible, intersubjective communion. Not elected body. A pope cannot represent my voice. Is it clear? The bishops cannot represent my voice. They have their own voices. However, they speak about Dalit, marginalization for histories. Is it clear? But the idea is truth is not a matter of representation. Truth in the process has turned to be a matter of repression and reproduction. I'm using R continuously so that we can go for a discussion. Truth, science claimed, is a matter of representation. Sociologists believe that idea, right? Pure science believe that idea. Husserl and Lyotard, all other late modern thinkers have come out a particular series of arguments that truth started as representation, in the process has become turned as a matter of repression, and repression as articulated in the form of reproduction, repetitive reproduction. There was a student, I'll just tell you a narrative and quickly move. There was a student of Husserl, a female student. Her name is Edith Stein, Edith, Edith Stein, Stein. She was also a Jewish girl. Due to the Nazism and the whole problems against what you call German Aryan certificate. Is it clear? These people turned to Christianity, either Protestant or Catholic. This lady converted herself to Christian religion and became a nun. You know nun? Not N-O-N-E, N-U-N. Within the Catholic Church. Is it clear? They claim that they have a consecrated life. Is it clear? And she turned as a nun. She was a student of Husserl, studied phenomenology. After studying phenomenology, worked under Husserl as a research assistant, wrote good number of work in relation to this phenomenological understanding of the social world. Due to the political climate, she was forced. And in fact, Catholic Church, there is another story about it. The Catholic Church made her a saint for her contribution. Not exactly contribution, because she was a Jew. During the Nazi period, these Jews, whether you are a religious or a non-religious, that you are a non-Aryan, you need to be what you call poisoned to death. And being a woman, she was taken to that camp, death camp, called Auschwitz. The bishops could not help, the Catholic bishops could not. In fact, they handed over this lady, who called so-called intellectually strong nun, to the Jewish regime, Nazi party, and they were taken by train and she was killed, poisoned to death. And now the Catholic Church have made her a big saint. That's a different story. Is it clear? Now, this phenomenological Enquiry is not simply a kind of a divine revelation idea that we read in the scripture, but it is an inquiry that demanded the life of people. It demanded life of people. It cannot be done in a pure armchair philosophy. It has to be integrated when we intersect the social realities. So let me explain the idea of truth as a matter of repression. During Hitler time, the Jews were in the concentration camp. When poisonous gas were sent to kill, to negate the life of the women, children, and people who are not able, they used to play nice Christian songs, Catholic songs, so that their death cry is not heard outside the prison walls. So truth, what is represented as true is devotion. What happens is an aesthetics of violence. This is caste. This is what I say. Reading Husserl, Heidegger, and many of these intellectual tradition are relating, dialoguing with them. Caste is a kind of violence deep down. It can be aesthetically presented as labor division, natural, moral, purusharthas, sanatana dharma. They are all, I would call it, or rather this tradition would call it, they are all violence, but aesthetically intervened, poisoned. So this exploration of the system of caste is not an immediate activity of celebrating a Pongal or a Deepavali or a holy festival. Rather, the festival is a con-celebration, which Husserl will talk in the language of what they call intersubjective existence of the other. The last one important idea, there is a person in interpretation, hermeneutics. Let me introduce his theme, what I call Gadamer. Hans Gadamer, right? He was one of the who contributed to the whole realm of hermeneutics as a science. Earlier, hermeneutics was considered as a method. Read the text, you explain it, you interpret it. Read the poetry, you interpret it. That is interpreting, making it understandable. But here they understood hermeneutics is the way of being in the world. There is no single document by which my understanding is enlightened. Rather, the moment I interact with the world, with another person, I understand her, she understands me. So it is a kind of, that understanding has to be unfolding. That's very, very interesting in Husserl. It is not folding. The religious caste, cultural fixations, they don't allow for unfolding of understanding. They enfold it. How to say that? They fold it. This is a correct understanding. For example, Christianity would say, I am created by God. I cannot think beyond it. Caste, Purusha Sukta will say, the Dalit is born, beyond that foot. And the knowledge persons are born from mouth. And they have their own analogies, metaphors, philosophy behind. We don't have time to discuss. But I'm putting it this way, that Gadamer talks about fusion of horizons. He uses the word hermeneutics of fusion of horizon. There is no single horizon at the backdrop of which we understand the world. That I am a Hindu, I understand the world only by whatever called Hinduism. Adu politics. That I am a Catholic and whatever in the whole world I understand through Catholic lens. Adu their type of soft politics. This another hegemonical ideological politics. What these people are talking, the secular intellectual tradition for which they have given their life, is that they are talking understanding is possible in a mode of fusion of horizons. There is no single truth. By a mode of combination, merging of horizons. I merge with the other and she merges with me. In our mutuality, our understanding of each other is revealed. There is no angel coming, Gabriel comes and tells me, God reveals the truth. Nothing like that. So in that mode of being, intersubjectively present, understanding is enfolded. They are not telling understanding is revealed. Understanding is revealed by a mode of fusion of horizons. Let me quickly pass on to very important idea by Derrida. I think Derrida is interestingly used in intellectual tradition, and I find Derrida is exploited very well by literature people. Some of you are students from English literature, and he has been voluminously used. But one interesting, I'm not talking the entire discussion. Let me take only one idea, what he talks about prejudice. The word you said, volatile. That is a word, French word. VORUTEIL. Volatile. Simple English translation is prejudice. Now, understanding the reality, be it Dalit or non-Dalit, is always grounded by an a priori understanding. Understanding the reality is always prejudiced. And therefore, becoming conscious of the prejudice itself is a mode of emancipation. I'm not talking about, that I'm doing some work against prejudices. The very nature of human understanding is coiled, conditioned by a pre-understanding. Put it in my own language, a pretextuality. I understand this context, not context as such, by a pretextual context, which he calls prejudice. So it's that prejudice is constructed by a system of language that you and me belong to. Suppose I speak a language of Vedic religion. When I understand the reality, I will understand the reality in and through the linguistic frame of the Vedic religion. Is it clear? For example, today people talk about Israel, America, Gaza, and the Iran issues. And Israel has all along been claiming that they are the chosen people. Where this idea of chosen comes in, as if others are not chosen, you and me are not chosen. And they are chosen by Yahweh God to occupy the land, Israel. Now, this is a political idea, a weaponized religious idea. So terms are weapons. They are political weapons. They are not very holiness. And the holiness itself is a problem. It's a political weapon. In order to say the other fellow is unholy by one's own articulated ontological construction. Let me quickly jump on. So what Derrida talks about, our understanding is always an understanding led by a sense of prejudice or pretextuality, a priori condition, by a mode of eidetic centrality that needs to be what we call, and you know the word binaries, right? They are opposed categories of understanding that needs to be deconstructed. But the very interesting thing, which people miss it, that meaning for Derrida is a matter of arbitrariness. There is nothing sanctum sanctorium about it. There is nothing essential about it. For Plato, essence is the meaningfulness. Is it clear? For most of the cultures, something traditional, essential, that we go back to the origin, or not at all possible. Is it clear? Derrida interestingly, meaning is a matter of arbitrary construction between binaries. I think that point we need to highlight when we discuss Dalit issue. That a person called upper or lower, coupled with the treatment of being caste stratified society, Ambedkar would say annihilating. The word annihilation goes along with the idea of deconstruction. Annihilation of caste, within inverted commas, I think marries very well with the notion of deconstruction. Deconstruction or annihilation in terms of transformation is, I'll come back to that idea. And finally, I am skipping Foucault, maybe next time we will discuss it. So some of the major ideas from these reflections that I had with you, I can put it this way. Understanding of Dalit reality, is it clear, calls for a serious intervention in the way the notion of Dalit has been constructed, along with a serious intervention how the notion of non-Dalit has been constructed as ideological, divine, ontological articulations, number one. And along with this, I know people who are involved in social action, genuinely, that the question of their sharing their pain, emancipatory praxis, they use, in Christianity they use often a praxis word, that word becomes too dear to them in order to be forgotten. They call it praxis. And basically it's an idea from the critical tradition. Now first one is, this articulation needs to be what we call understood. And understanding of this articulation of upper caste or lower caste or caste stratification, this articulation is, there are visible as well as invisible meaning layers. There are visible and invisible meaning layers which leads to visible, invisible social practices, number one. Number two, I would like to place before you for discussion, our truth claims are not value neutral. What do you mean value neutral? They are not innocent. Our truth claims are not completely innocent. They are not value neutral, nor they are divinely sourced. I pray to God, God has bestowed upon this understanding of the world. Nothing like that. And they are not culturally sublime in order to repeat back to the tradition. So they are not value neutral. They are not given by some sense of higher authority. That itself is a mind construction. And they are culturally sublime or transmitted sensibility. And therefore, the realm of reconstruction of knowledge is the best possibility, if at all, if scholars, critical tradition is moving towards the sense of a critique potential. In other words, critique potential demands two important dimensions. One, from the part of the intellectual tradition, hermeneutics of suspicion, hermeneutics of circularity, hermeneutics of fusion of horizons, hermeneutics of suspension, hermeneutics of social reconstruction, phenomenologically engaged, I think it should promote in our learning community a sense of critique potential, not a sense of cultural sublimity. What I mean by cultural sublimity, whatever my elders have said is right. Whatever my culture, that is my tradition. What is the word? Parampara. Sanatana Dharma, all that kind of things. Right. And equally in all major institutional religion, these things have to be what you call intervene, intersected, exposed to their nakedity. Derrida will use the word to its nothingness. To its nakedity means what? To its emptiness. To its aura, which has nothing sublime into it. So that is another important area where the realm of knowledge must be reconstructed. Simultaneously, the social structure must be reconstructed, which affects the social structure in terms of exploitative, binary, value hierarchical owing. Finally, being towards restoration of authenticity is textual, theoretical, as well as practical and contextual. And the subject is revealed by a mode of intersubjective presence. How do you say that? It's not a question of empathy, but by a mode of being with. And that is how the world is in the world. Is it clear? That's a major insight I think one has to infer from this very strong radical intellectual tradition, that the nature of being is not an isolated entity, is not an anointed entity, is not a stigmatized entity, is not a called entity, is not a representative entity, is not a self-enclosed entity. The nature of being is an entity in relationship with another being. That sense of relationship is not fixed, is not reproduced the past. It is ever unfolding. Somewhere I use the word not belonging. But it is an ever unfolding. This ever unfoldness, probably Ambedkar would use the word impermanency of truth. That's how I relate. Probably Ambedkar would use the word impermanence. So it is ever influencing. It cannot be simply fixed by my way of understanding. If it is wrong, it has to be corrected. So the prejudices must be what I call prejudiced. I use only one word. I think the entire intellectual tradition, very serious intellectual tradition, starting from Karl Marx, Freud, Nietzsche, Derrida, Lyotard, Foucault, and Gadamer, William Dilthey, is it clear? And Ambedkar from our Indian intellectual tradition have consistently discussed this particular theme, that restoration of being from its prejudice. Not only you are going to restore the Dalits, of course, that is a very needed work. 1 minute. Not only you are going to do some taking the cross of the others, that is a Christian language. Is it clear? First of all, you remove your prejudice cross. And how do you remove your prejudice cross? Culturally inhabited crosses, prejudices. And not only cultural prejudices, the mind itself is prejudiced to see the world as something other than itself, to see the elephant as wall, as tail. So probably I think all these thinkers share certain commonalities, that subjectivity or experience is the way to attain truth. My sense of being with you and your sense of being with you, in our mutuality, we grow towards, we unfold ourselves. It need not be constrained by my cultural belongingness. If that is the case, I think Ambedkar will talk about annihilation of caste. Ambedkar might talk about Dhamma as the path of cessation of suffering. Dhamma as a path of cessation of suffering. He doesn't say dukkha as karma. That is what I call parampara theory. He talks about dukkha as to be ceased, cessation of suffering. And you have a way to attain it. One of our ways is not intellectual intervention, which is social in nature, and social action to the question of justice. Probably in Ambedkar, normative condition, liberty, fraternity, and equality. Thank you very much. Probably we'll spend some time for any discussion.
Professor Lourdunathan, I think you
Yes, sir.
You missed Foucault. You spend
Yeah, I missed it. I missed it wantingly.
Yeah,
I missed it.
I understand that, but just give it 2 minutes or 3 minutes so that my young scholars would be, from your side, some introduction would be there about Foucault in relation to the.
Foucault I think is a very good prophet of the intellectual tradition. I use the religious word prophet. In religion, there are different connotations. Is it clear? He is an intellectual prophet of the 20th century. Foucault, in the sense that where he engages the idea of politics of power is in simultaneous relation with politics of knowledge production. The politics of power is simultaneously intertwined with politics of production of what is called knowledge. Number one. And in different periods of human history, he calls it episteme. Episteme means a regime of knowledge. Regime of knowledge. For example, in the Hitler period, Aryanism is the regime of knowledge. In the period of Hitler, Aryanism. If you want to exist, you need Aryan certificate. If you want to exist in India, you need to have what? Indian birth certificate. You understand the Aryanism? What you call foundationalism kind of language. Is it clear? And Foucault talks about every epoch, use the word epoch, E-P-O-C-H. Every epoch is grounded, guided by a specific episteme. And these epistemes are not inseparable. They conjoin each other. They joint and intersect each other to produce a major form of power, what we call imperialist power. and this is one major idea I like. In other words, power is in nexus to produce nexus of knowledge relation. To produce nexus of knowledge relation. Let me not go into much of the detail. Now, why I suggest that reading Foucault would be of great help, especially for our scholars, for research scholars at the national across, would help them to understand how the whole system of caste is not only pure and impure issue. It's not only a touchability, untouchability issue. It's not only a religious issue of some people are treated holy, some people are unholy, but seriously an issue of sharing of power. An issue of sharing of power. So from that point of view, I feel, rather I suggest Foucault's insights would be of great importance to explore the Dalit reality. Maybe next time, Professor, we shall discuss it. Professor? I'll come. Sir,
Yes,
I mean it. I have to feel sorry. I have a viva. Can I go? And you can discuss.
You're fantastic. But we are thankful for your very meaningful lecture. Thanks for giving this
Thank you.
your time out of your busy schedule. Thank you very much.
I cut the viva. Now the people are here. I'll come back. Thank you. Bye-bye. You have your discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
For a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry.
Akash?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You may carry on.
Thank you, Professor Lourdunathan, sir, for providing us a so much detailed understanding of phenomenological hermeneutics, and also with the reference with different intellectual traditions and the intellectuals, including Ambedkar. And we are always glad to hear you, and we will hoping that you will become again, and we will have such kind of a lecture again in coming future. So thank you, Professor Lourdunathan. Now I move towards chair's remarks. So I request the Professor Dr. Leela Karunyakara sir to please give us a chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Professor Lourdunathan's, this is a second lecture on Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge lecture series. So we are, on behalf of the Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge, we are really privileged to have Professor Lourdunathan's lecture. He introduced, in fact, to my young scholars, many new thinkers. And to my understanding, this might have been the first lecture, such kind of lecture, bringing very important thinkers into the realm of Dalit knowledge. He talked about hermeneutics of suspicion and suspension for radical transformation with regard to Karl Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud, and phenomenological reduction. He talked about Husserl and Heidegger, and he talked about truth is beyond representation, referring to Lyotard, and he talked about the hermeneutics of circularity, referring to William Dilthey, and the fusion of horizons, referring to Gadamer. Then he talked prejudice with reference to Derrida's concept of deconstruction, and of course he talked Foucault, nexus of power, producing structures of knowledge, and of course he talked Ambedkar, hermeneutics of social reconstruction. So he brought all the very important thinkers that matters to the understanding of how the truth is constructed, the structures of truth, with reference to Dalit knowledge, Dalit reality. We are really thankful to Professor Lourdunathan, and unfortunately, actually, this is the second time we rescheduled his lecture. This is the second lecture. First lecture, he was there with us. Full lecture he delivered, and he was there with us to even address the question and answers. But the second lecture we scheduled few weeks back. Suddenly, we need to reschedule it because he was very busy with JNU, some appointments. He supposed to be in the expert in some interview committees, selection committees. So we rescheduled for today. But again, he about to go to some PhD Viva. I understand that Professor Lourdunathan, very sought after professor for many academic engagements. Out of all his busy schedule, he has given us a time. Unfortunately, we could not have here for interaction with my scholars and participants. I could see many people here whom we don't know, maybe because of the Professor Lourdunathan, they are here and participated in this lecture. I don't know how to go ahead because if you have many queries, these things, I am not a professor of philosophy, and the lecture is neither mine. So, if you want to have any discussion, I would like to ask instead of questions because which I can't give answers. If you could contribute from your own side on the lecture which delivered by the Professor Lourdunathan, that would be more valuable because there are many young scholars from our side. Those who are those who are regularly engaging in these lectures. So if anybody senior professors are there who are from the same field of Professor Lourdunathan or who could contribute something differently, could give some other aspect of the ideas which floated by the Professor Lourdunathan. Those things are welcome. I
Thank
need
you.
to know some senior professors and academics who are with us in this lecture who could contribute something.
I'm seeing Sir Professor
Yeah.
Ravi Kumar sir wants
Yeah,
to say
Professor
something.
Ravi is there. He is a professor, senior professor in Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Central University. He is basically, he was a HOD of the Department of History as well as Dean of the School of Science, Social Sciences. Yes, Professor Ravi Kumar, could you contribute something?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, carry on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Karunyakara, sir, for giving this opportunity. And then it was a pleasure to listen to Professor Lourdunathan. There is no doubt about it. He is, as rightly pointed out by Professor Karunyakara, he is one of the leading philosophers on Dalit epistemology. Unfortunately, he's not here to interact. By the way, I think we can have some productive discussion as contemplated. I think one of the important dimension Professor Lourdunathan highlighted is that there is a chance for Dalit epistemology to construct an alternative vision. Alternative vision in the sense that alternative social values, cultural values, even the whole world view in which Dalit epistemology is structured and grounded. But now, maybe it's a very provocative question I would like to pose even to Lourdunathan as well as all the audience. The provocative question is that now in this lecture, what has been highlighted is basically a post-structuralist standpoint on ideologies of oppressed or ideologies of marginalized. That's well taken into consideration. But then the fact now is we need to move beyond Derrida. We need to move beyond Gadama. We need to go beyond post-modernist thinkers because post-modernist thinkers always subscribe to relativism. Relativism means, in the realm of knowledge production, even upper caste viewpoint as well as lower caste viewpoint, post-modernists treat equally. They say that both have their own dimensions, both have their own virtues. But then I think Dalit epistemology should shun that position. What I feel personally, what is needed is we have to embrace Jürgen Habermas, which I think the professor was not mentioning. Jürgen Habermas was a German philosopher who has written a fabulous book on philosophical discourse on modern. I think everyone should read that. In the philosophical discourse on modern, what he was, critiques Gadamar, his critiques, all postmodern thinkers. Why I'm bringing him here? See, when you are moving away from your tradition, when you are moving away from your parampara and trying to create a new value system, what is the base for the new value system? This is very important for us. If at all Dalits wants to create a new value system, and then from where they have to start. This is the most important dilemma. I think our entire Indian scholarship is grappling. Should we embrace tradition? Should we embrace our higher tradition like Hindu epistemology? Should we go for what I should say, Western modernity? I think there is a lot of perplexity. I was expecting Lourdunathan to address this issue, but then somehow he was, confined himself to only ideological realm. But I think my opinion is we have to take modernity into very seriously, Jürgen Habermas' concept of modernity, and whereby Dalit epistemology should start constructing its own alternative vision more into modern. That's what Ambedkar did, In fact, of course, he moves towards Buddhism. Even Buddhism also reconstructed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in an absolute, acute, rationalist tradition. So therefore, what I feel, most of the Dalit scholars, especially young scholars, when they are, trying to come up with alternative vision, they have to rely more on Habermas, because Habermas' position and Ambedkar's position are very close, because, they are ruthless advocates of modernity. Whereas what happens in a post-structuralist ideological configurations will help us to problematize our experience, but then they will lead nowhere actually. This is what I could see that now. So therefore, you have to have one well-defined, empirical, verifiable ideological system with which you have to counter ultimately the hegemonic dominant forces. The hegemonic dominant forces cannot be countered merely inventing a new language, merely inventing a new vocabularies. Rather, you need very courageous articulation of your modernist vision. That's what I feel, Thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ravi Kumar. So it's a very valuable contribution. Any next?
Yeah, I have something to say.
Yeah, Dr. IS, I could not.
Kumar. I am from Karnataka, Belagaum. I know Lourdunathan since 40 years. We were together in philosophical conferences in many places. So last week he had been to my place and he also talked on Ambedkar and feminism. Now, after hearing his scholarly lecture, so many theories are there, but now Dalits are in a disadvantage. They are fractured. By any means, we are having a tendency to undermine the others. We take any means, by richness and poor, or female or male, or caste by birth. We have that tendency to undermine them. Now, if that is the case, how to restore their undermined bad effects? One way, that is by giving a reservation. Let anybody talks about me, whether I am a lower caste or male or female, whatever it may be, but I should be compensated by the economic conditions, the reservation in the national level. Then I don't bother about whether they call me as a lower caste or a lady or female or whatever. This is my suggestion from the government side or from the social side. If the compensation is given to them by economic or any other, so then we need not bother about this caste system. Because we have, every one of us are having a tendency to undermine the others. To undermine the others, we take any policy, any judgment. Like I am born in a big higher caste. I am a male person. I am a rich person. I am having so much property. I am a politician's son. Like that, we are having this tendency. Okay, let them use their tendency. It is they are moving in a dark world, but I should be compensated. Dalits should be compensated by economic conditions, reservations, and many other policies. This is my submission.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Shashikant, you want to say something?
Actually, sir, I had a question in my mind for Professor. Uh, on common ground, sir, you might be answer to my question, sir. Sir, there are English dominated societies in the world. We can look at the Western societies. There might be some disputes, debates, but there is no warlike conflicts. Okay? And I mean to say, sir, language always brings somewhat cohesive totality and meta narratives, meta stories with together. Sir has mentioned Lyotard, Derrida, and Foucault. These are, sir, very fancy words in sociology. This might be their theories might be a very important commodity tool for intellectual things, but uh, in the normal society, we can see that in common society, there are common conscience, common consciousness, and there are some agreement together to meta narratives, meta stories. So how we can look at these, because Derrida, Lyotard thinks that there might be no common language, no neutral language will be, and there is no space for meta narratives. But I think, sir, there are always a need of meta narratives, and I resonate with Professor Ravi, sir. But the Habermas actually, as per my understanding, always things like there we can see Kha Panchayat system like that. Some people stay together and communicate things and solve the problems. We see in the society, Indian society always. But this is not a solution for Dalit problems. But Ravi sir has mentioned rightly on that we have to create a new set of rules, new meta narratives for us. That's what Baba Sahib Ambedkar did. How, sir, how you look at this thing? Because Professor is not here to answer my curiosity, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Shashikumar, I'll answer your question certainly from my own experience of roots of knowledge, which is basically a history. I'm being a historian. I try to answer your question.
Sir, because history always based on meta narratives. There is no meta narratives means there is no set of rules, no morality in the society. This is what I am asking. That's why you are good for.
Let me carry forward where Professor Lourdunathan left. See, he was talking about the epistemology. So he defined it stating that epistemology is a regime of knowledge. And he was giving an example of Hitler during Nazi rule. He was talking about unless something is related to Aryan pride.
Yeah.
So that can't be fit into the epistemology of the regime of knowledge of Nazis. So during the Hitler regime, the epistemology revolved around the regime of knowledge is based on Aryan pride, Aryan identity. Unless your articulation, your narrative, your knowledge foundation related to that particular epistemology, that otherwise you are branded as anti-national and you are persecuted. So this is what happened. It means there is a power relation with the knowledge. There is a power relation with the knowledge. then there is a power relation with the knowledge. Knowledge, after all, is built upon the vocabulary. Again, making your vocabulary as your own soldiers. So vocabulary, even if you are using for the peace purpose or war purpose, even if you are using for the conflict purpose, or just for the harmony, for stability, whatever the purpose, the vocabulary acts as a soldier. Vocabulary acts as a force. In other words, your knowledge is a force. By definition of force, it's related to power. That's why it is said that knowledge is a power. Now, meta-narrative you are talking, morality you are talking. Yes, of course. Of course, meta-narrative, it inspires you for the larger purpose. So, meta-narrative is, it has a space to define your reality. It's not necessary that you have to fight your gas cylinder every day for a gas cylinder, or you have to fight for your two rotis, your two times food. It's more than that. Life is more than that. That's why there is a biblical saying. Not everything about bread. Life is not bread alone. It's more than that. Understanding? So meta-narrative has a space to construct something called reality, something called truth. So knowledge, construction of knowledge, that's a Dalit knowledge. Construction of Dalit knowledge needs vocabulary. And vocabulary of which language? That also matters. So current times, it's English vocabulary, English language, the vocabulary produced by the English language. You create your own vocabulary, but the language must be English, because the epistemology, the regime of knowledge, is defined through English only, English language only. So unless you build your vocabulary through English, your knowledge has no relation to acceptable reality. So if you want to construct the truth of your own Dalit truth in the world of Dalit knowledge, you have to employ English language, even vocabulary of your own. You could develop your own Dalit vocabulary to construct the Dalit knowledge, Dalit reality, Dalit truth. But that vocabulary has to be part of English language only, because the current world uses English language as a means, an agency of constructing the knowledge, constructing reality, constructing the truth. If you use some other language, that is a secondary to the English knowledge only. That's why Ambedkar adopted English. When Ambedkar wrote and spoke, his own people were not even having education in local languages. Many Dalits in Maharashtra were not even educated in Marathi language, but Ambedkar was writing at that time in English. That's why today Ambedkar thoughts are being discussed. Had he wrote in Marathi language or some dialect of Marathi, Ambedkar thoughts would have been not that much effective in 2026. But today we are talking about Ambedkar ideas and Ambedkar because he adopted a language that matters. In ancient period, during the Buddha, Pali that mattered. During Vedic age, Sanskrit that mattered. Greek mattered at one point of time of world history. Latin mattered at one point of the time of the world history. But what matters today is English. That is the reason Ambedkar adopted in the English language, but constructed his own vocabulary. To construct your own knowledge, you need to employ your own vocabulary because words are your soldiers. Ambedkar attacked Brahminical knowledge, stating that Brahminical knowledge is not knowledge, it's a myth. Positioning himself that he is revealing the truth. He is revealing the reality. So he positioned himself through the English language, employed the English vocabulary. By redesigning the vocabulary to construct the Dalit knowledge. So meta-narrative is required, of course, but to construct meta-narrative, you talked about Hindi also, English also. That's why I'm talking. How language is very important to construct even meta-narrative or mega-narrative, or meta-narrative or mega-narrative or mini-narrative, whatever the narrative, the kind of narrative. To construct knowledge, word, you need a language. Then the question is that which language we need to adapt. Ambedkar adopted English. And Ambedkar should adopt English. Not only because Ambedkar adopted, because that's what the need of the hour. You can't construct your Dalit knowledge or Ambedkarite Buddhist knowledge in Pali. That is not going to solve your problem. Just because of Buddha used the Pali language. Buddha constructed. It's not that Buddha created Pali language. Even before the birth of Buddha, Pali language was there. Pali was there. But Buddha employed Pali language just because Pali was the medium of construction of. Pali was the language. That was the medium to construct Buddha's own idea of reality, of Buddhist knowledge. But Ambedkar didn't employ the Pali. Even though Ambedkar was fascinated by inspired by the Buddha's ideas and Pali language, but Ambedkar employed English language. And English is a Christian language, but Ambedkar adopted Christian language. That's the English. The whole Christian world speak English. To construct, to reposition Dalits in the world of knowledge, Ambedkar adopted English knowledge and employed Dalit vocabulary. That's what the Ambedkar is also supposed to do. I hope that I have given whatever the best I could do to your answer. Anybody else?
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone?
I think no one, sir.
Yeah, fine.
No one.
Now wind up.
Okay, thank you. With the permission of the chair, we are going to move toward our last session of our today's lecture, and that is vote of thanks. So I request Shashikant Sambodhi to please deliver a vote of thanks for today's lecture.
Thank you. On the behalf of Karunyakara Institute of Dalit Knowledge, it's a matter of immense pleasure for me to deliver a formal vote of thanks for this session. First of all, our warm thanks and profound gratitude to Professor Lella Karunyakara sir, a respected Dalit historian and Ambedkarite thinker, for kindly chairing this important session. We are also truly thankful to Professor S. Lourdunathan, former visiting professor of philosophy, JNU New Delhi, for a visionary lecture on the topic Dalit Phenomenological Hermeneutics. The lecture is both empowering and profoundly insightful. We thank you once again, sir. Our sincere thanks to the kind presence of Ravi sir and Ravi Kumar sir and Dr. I.S. Kumkar sir. And I also special thanks to our coordinators, Dr. Sukeshni, Dr. Darshana Misram, Dr. Smita Bhagat, Mr. Akash Kobragade, and Mr. Shreyat Bod and Mr. Vijay for this continuous effort and support in making this session successful. And our sincere thanks to all the participants and attendees of the 40th online lecture in the KIDK lecture series also. This lecture series started on Ambedkar Jayanti 2025 continues to spread knowledge and new ideas in the field of Dalit study. Thank you once again to everyone for your valuable participation. And before we close, please don't forget to subscribe to the Dalit Knowledge YouTube channel, where the recording of this session will be uploaded soon. Jai Bhim. The session is over.